Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Banachari Jai Om Vishnu Pad Brahmahamsa Parivajagacharya Ashtadurshata Shishimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Brahmahamsa Parivajagacharya Ashtadurshata Shishimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 7, text number 27. Tiryak Manusha Devanam Sarisripa Patatrinam Vada Naha Sarga Samvyoham Garbha Sveda Dvija Udbhidam Tiryam Manusha Devanam Sarisripa Patatrinam Varanah Sarga Samvyoham Garbhasveda Dvijodbhidam Dam Tiryan Manusha Devanam Sarisripa Patitrinam Varanah Sarga Samvyuham Garbhasveda Dvijodbhidam Tiryan Manusha Devanam Sarisripa Patitrinam Varanah Sarga Samvyuham Garbhasveda Dvijodbhidam. What is it? What verse is it? Oh, really? Is it? Oh. Okay. So, then I'll just chant 21 once, and then somebody else can chant in response. Srishtvagre mahad adini savikaryani anukramat tebhyo virajam udritya tannanu pravishad vibhu. Please repeat. Mataji's? Srishtva, after creating. Agre, in the beginning. Mahat adini, in the total material energy. Savikarani, along with the sense organs. Anukramat, by a gradual process of differentiation. Tebhya, out of that. Virajam, the gigantic universal form. Udritya, manifesting. Tam, unto that. Anu, later. Pravishat, entered. Vibhuhu, the supreme. Translation: after creating the total material energy, the Mahat Tattva, and thereby manifesting the gigantic universal form with senses and sense organs, the Supreme Lord entered within it. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Fully satisfied by the answers of sage Maitreya, Vidura wanted to understand the remaining portions of the creative function of the Lord, and he took the clue from the previous topics. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gananjana Shalakiya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakada Mayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Tapadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagratam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shivashakan Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpati Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhi Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Avancha Kapatubhyascha Kripasandubhyevacha Patita Nam Pavane Pyo Vaishnavi Pyo Namo Namaha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Putari Shmate Bhaktivikasa Swamin Iti Namane Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Putari Shmate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namane Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunivari Paschatya Deshatarne Putir Mahadbiri Mafpura Vibur Nirmaya Shitayad Amusha Purasha Bungdi Gunan Shurasha Shudashatmaka Sonangashishta Bhagavan Vashamsi Me. After creating the total material energy, the Mahatattva, and thereby manifesting the gigantic universal form of senses and sense organs, the Supreme Lord entered within it. So, yeah, this is describing the process of creation. That was already described some. I'm just looking. Briefly, it was described, and now Vidura is asking for more details here. So the gigantic universal form with senses and sense organs was created, and the Supreme Lord entered within it. He enlivened it or set it into action. Vidura wanted to know more about this, so I'll just be dynamic with the verses. I'm sorry, but I'm going to take more verses and just speak until 8:30. So the next verse, Yamahor Adyam Purusham Sahasyangri Urubahukam Yatra Vishva Me Loka Savikasham Ta'asate. The Purusha incarnation lying on the casual ocean is called the original Purusha in the material creations, and in his Virat form, in whom all the planets and their inhabitants live, he has many thousands of legs and hands. Purport: the first Purusha is Karano Dakashayi Vishnu. The second Purusha is Garbho Dakashayi Vishnu, and the third Purusha is Kshiro Dakashayi Vishnu, in whom is contemplated the Virat Purusha, a gigantic form in which all the planets with their different developments and inhabitants are floating. So here Vidura will ask a bunch of questions. This chapter is called The Questions by Vidura, and he asks on many different topics. I'll read some more verses later. The first thing he immediately asks, well, just to give a gloss, later he will ask about, can you please describe the Prajapatis, how the Manus, the descendants of the Manus, how the Vedas were divided, the different divisions of living entities like this. So why does Vidura care about this? We can remember that he originally approached Maitreya not for this sort of knowledge specifically. It's almost like the opposite. He wanted to know about Krishna's pastimes, and now he's asking, although it seems fantastic, on one sense it's mundane, just how the different divisions of living entities. It's not something very amazing. But why this is important, why he's asking about this, is he speaks in the verse we recited, Tam anu pravishad vibhuhu. Vibhuhu. The Supreme Lord has entered into this universal form. And all these things that he's asking about are vibhutis of the Lord, they're opulences of the Lord. Specifically Krishna, obviously we understand. The first thing that's being described here is the three Purushas. The first Purusha, and yeah, we were just hearing about that. Karno Dakashayi Vishnu. He lies down in the causal ocean, and he's the original Purusha. He has many in his Virat form, Virat Rupa, he has many thousands of legs and hands. We have this hymn. Previously, we read a chapter on this from the Vedas, Purusha Sukta. There's also a chapter in the Bhagavatam confirming the same thing. Also, in the previous chapter, the same thing was again. We have this chapter. Purusha Sukta confirmed in the 9th chapter, I think the 2nd canto, and then the same thing is being described in the previous chapter. We have, for example, so many things. Or the evacuating channel, the demigod that came out of that, the brahmanas coming from the head, the kshatriyas coming from the arms, etc. like this. So all of this is found in the Purusha Sukta and is confirmed. Not only did, we've heard about these things, but not only have the sense organs manifested from this Purusha, but also the presiding demigods of those sense organs have also been manifested from that. For example, we hear about vegetables being manifest, and also simultaneously Chandra also becomes manifest because he's the demigod that controls and gives sustenance to vegetables, etc. like this. As well as other things we hear of the evacuating outlet being manifest simultaneously. Mitra, the demigod, was also manifest side by side. So all these things are coming out of the first Purusha, Karno Dakashayi Vishnu. Sometimes the Purusha Sukta, it's taken in different senses. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explained that it's in relation to the Virat Purusha, the Virat form of the Lord. You can also take it it's in relation to Karna Dakashayi Vishnu. So either way is bona fide, because ultimately is being offered to Vishnu or his various forms. So these three Purushas, the material world is created by means of this. Krishna creates the material world, but he doesn't do so directly. It's delegated again and again and again. Sometimes we hear that Lord Shiva creates the material world. Sometimes we hear that Balaram or Sankarshan creates the material world. Sometimes we hear just Krishna creates the material world. But the specifics is that Krishna expands himself. And then by these expansions, I won't get into so much detail, these Purushas come. The first Purusha, Karna Dakashai Vishnu, he lies down in the Karna ocean. He's Mahavishnu. And from him, all these innumerable universes are expanding from the pores of his body. Then he enters into those universes as Garbhadakashai Vishnu. And then again, he's found within the heart as Kshiradakashai Vishnu. He's also lying on the milk ocean and the heavenly planets. But also the Kshiradakashai Vishnu is more prominently associated as being Antaryami, the indwelling supersoul, who's also the permitter of the activities of the material world, who gives sanction to the living entities, and who's the living entities' shelter. So all these three Vishnus have their hand in creating the material world, one after another. And they have different forms. We were familiar with this. Kshiradakashai Vishnu looks a little different from Karnadakashai Vishnu. Karnadakashai Vishnu is lying down on the ocean. Kshiradakashai Vishnu, he's also known as Janardana, and his form as the Supersoul. He's standing within the heart of all living entities, so that's also there. So this is regarding these three Vishnus. The next verse, text 23, Yasmin dashavidah prana sinindriyartina driyas trivrit tvayirito yito varnas tad vibhutir vadasvanaha. O great Brahmana, you have told me that the gigantic Virat form and his senses, sense objects, and 10 kinds of life air exist with 3 kinds of life vigor. Now, if you will, kindly explain to me the different powers of the specific divisions. Again, if you see the Sanskrit here, you can go up to it. The same thing is coming here. Why Vidura is interested into this? One thing is you could take it, even if you take it, he's describing the universal form, which is material form. Nevertheless, he's interested in that universal form because it's tat vibhuti. It's an opulence of the Lord. So he wants to hear about the opulence of the Lord. Vibhuti, just like we have in Bhagavad Gita, we hear how there's different vibhutis described. We hear, for example, I don't remember them. Krishna being among the Adityas, among the Varuts, being manifest as the Ashwini Kumaras, etc., like this in the 10th chapter of Gita. So these are opulences of the Lord. It's not that Krishna is so much directly those things, but they're exhibitions of the Lord's opulence. Being manifest as Indra, etc., like this. Indra is a separate personality, but Indra's opulence, the post of Indra, everything, Indra's whole existence is coming from Krishna himself. Just as Krishna himself says elsewhere in the Gita, know that anything you see in this world that of any opulence is just a spark of my own splendor. So these things are listed to indicate the opulence of the Lord. So similarly too, although this is more directly related, being manifest in the Virat form, Vidura he wants to know about this because it's in relation to the Lord. Otherwise, he doesn't have so much care about any of this stuff. So he's inquiring about very highly technical topics. His senses, sense objects, and 10 kinds of life air. Now he wants it explained the different powers of the specific divisions. And it continues, Yatra putraishcha pautraishcha naptriptbi sahagotrajaihi praja vichitra kritaya asanyabhiridam tatam. O my Lord, I think that the prowess manifest in the forms of sons, grandsons, and family members has spread all over the universe in different varieties and species, referring to the prowess of the Virat Rupa. He's not necessarily interested in just praja, etc., like this in and of itself, but he's interested in these putras because he's viewing them as manifestations of the Virat Purusha. Continuing, prajapati nam sapatish chaklip kan prajapatin sargamschayvanu sargamscha manun manvantaradhipan. O learned Brahmana, please describe how the leader of all demigods, namely Prajapati, Brahma, decided to establish the various Manus, the head of the ages. Please describe the Manus also, and please describe the descendants of those Manus. So again, the same thing. He's interested in all this specifically because it has a relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Manu and Manus, you could say, they're generally speaking, at least in my knowledge, they're devotees of the Lord. They're demigods. They're ranked among the demigods. Nevertheless, he's interested to know about this because the Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared in Manu's dynasties, the different dynasties of the Manus, and we'll hear about this. And these questions are gradually setting the scene for the speaking. Although we're in the third canto, these things again compromise the topics of the Bhagavatam, which are listed in the second chapter. The topics of creation, subcreation, destruction, changes of the Manus, etc., like this. So the Prabhupada writes in purport to this that the human race, or Manushasar, descends from the Manus, sons and grandsons of the Prajapati, Brahma. The descendants of Manu reside in all the different planets and rule all the universe. Next verse. Pari adhaschaye loka bhumir mitratma jasate tesham samstam pramanam cha bhur lokasya chavarnaya. O son of Mitra, kindly describe how the planets are situated above the earth as well as underneath it. And also please mention their measurement as well as that of the earthly planets. This is all described in the fifth canto. So many of these topics, actually directly, if you look at it, Maitreya doesn't directly cover most of these things in detail. If we see a later verse, I probably won't get to that, but we see that Vidura asks Maitreya, I'll just read it here, but somebody can cover it later because it has a longer purport, that he's asking, well, anyway, I can give the essence. He's asking, dharmatma kama moksha nam. He's asking about dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. But the thing is, the Bhagavatam rejects these things from the beginning as cheating processes. So why is Vidura asking about this, and how does Maitreya respond? Well, actually, Maitreya doesn't respond. There's no response given in the Bhagavatam. He doesn't speak on these things, actually. It doesn't mean he doesn't speak on these things. Sometimes in the Bhagavatam we see, for example, in the second canto, we see, I'm forgetting the details, but Maharaj Parikshit, he asked a question, and the answer isn't found in the Srimad Bhagavatam, but the answer is found in the Padma Purana. So Shukadev Goswami, he gave an answer, but it's not recorded in this version that's spoken by Sutta Goswami. So the question could have just been omitted. It could have been covered indirectly by other topics, or it could be have covered in other Puranas. So similarly, too, he's asking about all these things. Specifically, we have here in this verse, how the planets are situated above the earth as well as underneath it. And please mention their measurement as well as that of the earthly planets. So I'm not so learned in the samvad between Vidura and Maitreya, but to my knowledge, these things aren't described in detail. Rather, principally, it goes on to speak about Lord Kapila Dev's teachings. Compromises a major part of their conversation. And you see later, we have the calculation of time from the atom. Primarily, things get into Sankhya philosophy more than a description of the universal form. These things are described later in the Bhagavatam, in the fifth canto, but this is described directly by Shukadev to Parikshit Maharaj, not by Maitreya to Vidura. So presumably these things are described, we just don't have a count of them here. Things are just being shortened for the sake of not repeating topics, but also just extracting the essence of this conversation. The sages, specifically, we can recall at the end of the second canto, I remember it's a little hazy, but we were getting into similar technical topics. Shukadev Goswami was about to speak on topics regarding the creation, and then the conversation backs out, and then the sages of Naimisharanya, they questioned Sutta Goswami. Sutta Goswami in passing had mentioned how Vidura approached Maitreya, and the sages redirected the whole conversation from topics of creation to asking why did Vidura approach Maitreya. They wanted to know more about, they were more interested to know about why Vidura approached Maitreya, specifically more than the details of the creation. So, So this principle is there. That's one principle we see throughout the Bhagavatam. So something similarly could be followed here. Srila Prabhupada in his purport to this verse regarding the planets and how they're situated. Oh yeah, just another point. Specifically, these measurements, definitely we don't find these measurements, Maitreya speaking these measurements. These measurements only come in the 5th canto. So in his purport to this verse, Srila Prabhupada says, Yasmin vigyate sarvam evam vigyatam bhavati. This Vedic hymn declares emphatically that the devotee of the Lord knows everything material and spiritual in relationship with the Lord. I've spoken this previously. Devotees are not simply emotional, as is ill-conceived by certain less intelligent men. Their direction is practical. They know everything that is and all the details of the Lord's domination over all the different creations. So I've spoken on this point extensively. I dedicated a previous class to this, so I won't retract too much of what I've said. But we see that one point is just reiterating that Maitreya, Vidura is approaching Maitreya to know about Krishna. But he's not sentimental. He's not unintelligent. It's not just, of course, absorption of Krishna's Leela is the highest form of philosophy and the highest stage of existence. Nevertheless, it's not that he's ignorant of worldly topics. It's not that he's neglecting them. We see, for example, so many things he's inquiring about the creation, the situation of the planets, etc. like this. And this can all be known, everything material and spiritual can be known in relationship with the Lord. So everything has a relationship with Krishna, directly or indirectly. The material universe also, definitely the spiritual universe, that's easily perceived. The material universe also, the material world has a direct relationship with Krishna, because Krishna accepts the material world as his pastime. He creates the material world as a pastime to put a higher perspective on all these questions, rather than viewing them even from a point of vibhuti as an opulence of the Lord. Directly, it's all a pastime of the Lord. The whole creation of the material world from a higher scale is Krishna's Leela. Krishna accepts indirectly Krishna expands himself as avatars, these three Purushas we spoke about. And then these Purushas, they accept as their pastime the 3 modes of material nature. And from accepting those 3 modes of material nature, they become enlivened. The whole creative process comes about. And then all these chain of events happen one after another. The creation takes place. Brahma is there, sitting on the lotus. He executes austerities. Then he creates the universe. Then from there, he creates so many different, I think we hear about this later. This comes later in the 3rd canto. He creates different types of living entities. He creates demigods. He creates the Manus, etc. like this. And the whole universe comes like this. And then the whole universe is set into action. And from all these Prajapatis and Manus, etc., whole dynasties come from this. So you can get lost in the whole process, but it's ultimately a pastime of Krishna in a higher sense. Of course, the material world is also a prison for the living entity to execute his own so-called pastimes, perversions to execute his. Krishna gives facility to the living entity to fulfill his material desires. So that's the independent will of the living entity. Nevertheless, Krishna does so. He willingly permits the living entity to do so. So it's all done out of his will. So all of this, in one sense or another, has direct relationship with the Lord. The Supreme Lord has his hand in everything. Srila Prabhupada, he writes at the end of the 2nd canto. So, these are just more verses one after another with no translations. Short purports. So I'll just continue on these topics. The next verse, 27. Thiryan manusha devanam sarisripa patitrinam, we read this, vadana sarga samvyuham garbhasveda dvijobhidam. Also, please describe the living entities under different classifications. Subhumans, humans, those born of the embryo, those born of perspiration, and those who are twice born, birds, and also the plants and vegetables. Kindly describe their generation and subdivisions also. So, a few things here. There's 4 kinds of living entities that are being described here. Specifically, the source of their birth. Those who are born from wombs, those who are born from perspiration, those who are born from twice born. We have the word here, dvija. We use this word dvija typically to refer to brahmanas. Here it doesn't mean brahmana. Ja means you could birth like that. Dwi means two, so literally means twice born or two born, like that. So here is referring to eggs, birds. Also, others are twice born, just like we see snakes, turtles, things like this. Amphibious-like creatures are also sometimes fish, for the most part, to my knowledge, and also twice born because they take their birth through eggs. So when there's a birth like this, first the female, the mother, she lays an egg, and then the egg later hatches. So there's two births. The living entity is born twice is considered like this. So they're also called twice born. Of course, Brahmanas, they attain their second birth by initiation into the Vedas. Srila Prabhupada would explain, Shastra explains actually, that human beings, we have here Tiryak, subhuman, and then Manusha, human beings. Technically speaking, without becoming Dvija, or twice born, more or less everybody is Tiryak, or subhuman. Of course, it's not everybody. Srila Prabhupada would explain like this sometimes, that human being means we have our animal birth, animalistic birth from the father and mother, material father and mother, and then we have a spiritual birth through initiation by the bona fide spiritual master. Of course, there are those who are not Dvijas in society. Shudras are not Dvijas. They don't receive a sacred thread. They don't receive initiation through the Vedas. Nevertheless, even if one is a Shudra, it's incumbent upon every human being to seek initiation by a bona fide spiritual master. So even if one doesn't receive Vedic initiation, nevertheless he can become Dvija, or twice born, or receive that second spiritual birth by spiritual initiation given by the spiritual master. So, so these different divisions are described here, as well as plants and vegetables. So he wants to know about the generations and subdivisions also. He continues to the next verse. Gunavatarer Vishvasya Sargastiti Apyashrayam Srijatta Srinivasasya Vyachakshvadaro Vikramam. Please also describe the incarnations of the modes of nature, Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwar. And please describe the incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his magnanimous pastimes. So here we have, so he's wanting to know about these three Gunavatars. We have this word here, Gunavatare. Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwar. Brahma, Maheshwar, also Shiva, in other words. So he wants to know about these. Why? Specifically, the same thing, Gunavatars. He's viewing them not as independent personalities, but he's viewing them as, understanding them as Gunavatars of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, he's interested in knowing about the pastimes of the Lord Brahma and also Lord Shiva, or the activities, we can say. Specifically in relation to Sargastiti and Apyaya, destruction, creation, maintenance, and destruction. And please describe the personality, incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his magnanimous pastimes. The word here is used, udara. We have this word in Bhagavad Gita where we were reciting yesterday. Supreme Personality of God is very magnanimous. Why? Well, one, he's very magnanimous in the sense that he creates the universe, the material world, even though there's no necessity for it, just to, for the sake of the jiva who wants to lord it over the material world. He's magnanimous in that sense, this creation, this pastime of creation. Another sense, he's magnanimous in the sense that he comes to this material world, he enacts his pastimes for the deliverance of the conditioned soul out of this material world and back to Godhead. Just as Krishna, so many things. I mean, generally, the Lord comes to this world, does some enacts pastimes for the upliftment of the conditioned souls, to kill the atheists and to deliver the devotees, and also principally attract third thing we can lump in there, to attract the conditioned souls back to Godhead. The devotees are delivered differently, the demons are annihilated, but another function is that those of a demonic mentality are also delivered from the situation by becoming attracted to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sometimes that deliverance is affected by killing the demons, sometimes that's affected by attracting the demons. Just as we hear, for example, Krishna exhibiting his Rasa Leela in this world, his Rasa Leela out of Vrindavan, one purpose of why he did so, obviously to enjoy his own pastimes, to give pleasure to the devotees. Another reason why he enacted that pastime, why he danced with the gopis, is to attract the conditioned souls of this world and to show them what real sex pleasure is, for lack of a better word, what sex pleasure is just but a perversion of, to give them an idea of what real loving exchanges are. The conditioned souls in this world, the highest thing in the highest pleasure in this material world, generally among lay people, people look for love, actually. You see people, base people, unintelligent people in the world, materially so, they chase after gross sense pleasures. They want some sort of money or job or position and like that. And generally people operate like this, but in a higher sense, people are more or less looking for relationships. They're looking for somebody to love, for somebody to love, and for somebody to love them. Otherwise, if people don't have this, there's a hole in their life. And you see this, people who have everything materially, they have wealth, they have learning, they have fame, but due to a lack of relationship, due to a lack of a sense of love, they become depressed, they're feeling unfulfilled. You see even people who have these opulences, they commit suicide because of a lack of fulfillment in relationships. So ultimately, people are looking for love in this world, but the love in this world is nothing but lust. The love in this world just culminates in the highest pleasure of this world, which is sex pleasure, more or less. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he equates the love that's manifest in this world as, he just lumps it all into one. That desire is, what is that? That real love is only found in relationship to Krishna. Real love, prema, is only found in relationship to Krishna. Everything else is more or less just lust. So, what is that? Kam, Krishnendriya Priti Isha, Dhari Premanam? Is it? Krishnendriya Priti Isha Dhari Premanam. So to satisfy Krishna's senses is called love, whereas to satisfy one's own senses is called lust. Satisfaction of one's own senses, it comes in different forms. Just like I was speaking, so people have this conception of, I want to love somebody. I want to give my love to somebody else. I want to please somebody else. But actually, in the material world, this mentality is just actually impossible. And such a thing doesn't exist. It's all conditional. This feeling of, I want to help somebody, I want to love somebody, I want to do good for somebody else, ultimately is for the satisfaction of one's own senses. Hare Krishna. Because one receives some sort of pleasure from helping somebody else. One engages in philanthropic activities. He gives some money to some charity. He gives some money to some homeless person. Why? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, subtly or grossly, he gets some sort of pleasure out of it. Otherwise, he wouldn't do so. People repose their love in one specific person. Why? Because they derive their pleasure themselves out of doing so. It is not completely selfless. The mother cares for her child because there's a bodily relationship with that child and nothing more. Ultimately, when we boil it down, this pure, therefore we say that we have this word conditioned. It's conditional. True unconditional love is only found on the spiritual platform, free from any sort of designations. Otherwise, everything else is just conditioned by the modes of material nature. So, yeah. I forget how I got on that, but getting back to the verse, Srila Prabhupada has a purport to this. I'll read the purport. So we're speaking about Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwar, and the Supreme Personality of God is magnanimous incarnation. Srila Prabhupada writes in purport to this, although Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwar, the three incarnations of the material modes of nature, are the principal deities for the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the cosmic manifestation, they are not the final authority. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, is the ultimate goal, the cause of all causes. He is the ashraya, or the final rest of everything. So, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, they all create, even Vishnu, they all have their role, but ultimately, Krishna is the shelter of all three of them. Krishna is the shelter of the entire, we have this word ashraya, he's the shelter of everything, of the material world, also of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Vishnu is a manifestation he's an avatar of Krishna. Maheshwar as well. You could take it indirectly in one way or another. He has his source in Krishna. Brahma as well. Sometimes Brahma is Vishnu himself. He's a direct expansion of Krishna or Vishnu. Elsewhere, other places, he's an empowered living entity. Jivotama, we have this word used in the Bhagavatam. The highest living entity in this material world, the most qualified living entity in this material world, takes birth as Lord Brahma. So, be he an incarnation of Vishnu himself, or be he a jiva, either way, he has his ashraya, he has his rest. He takes shelter of Krishna. He's dependent upon Krishna. And even Vishnu, incarnations of Vishnu, all incarnations of Vishnu, we hear 1 Canto, 3rd chapter, all the incarnations of Vishnu, all the different Leela avatars, Purusha avatars, Guna avatars we're hearing about here, they all come again from Krishna. Krishna is the final resting place of everything. He's even the final resting place of himself. I was just reading in the 2nd canto, anyway, I forget the Sanskrit, but the English, it comes like this. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who creates the material world, and he's the resting place for it all, and he's also the resting place of his own self. Ashrayashyatma, something like this, it comes. He's the resting place of himself. Whereas living entity, his ashraya, or his shelter, specifically in the material world, is the Paramatma, and also going up higher, Krishna himself. Krishna is the resting place of himself. He's independent. We have this word in the beginning of Bhagavatam, Surat. He's completely independent. His own shelter is himself. He's independent, self-sufficient, completely detached from everything. Whereas everything else in this material world, principally these personalities, they're dependent. Vishnu, although in one sense he's also Swarat, in one sense also he has his ultimate shelter in Krishna because he's an expansion of Krishna, an avatar of Krishna. Maheshwara as well, Brahma definitely so, being a living entity. So all of them have their ultimate source or resting place in Lord Krishna. So I'll just cover one more verse because I plan to also cover this one, so I'll just speak a little more. Varnashrama vibhagamshcha rupa shila svabhavataha rishinam jamakarmani vedasyacha vikarshanam. O great sage, kindly describe the divisions and orders of human society in terms of symptoms, behavior, and characteristics of mental equilibrium and sense control. Also, please describe the births of the great sages and the categorical divisions of the Vedas. Purport: the 4 statuses and orders of human society, Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras, as well as the Brahmacharis, Grahastas, Vanaprasthas, and Sannyasis, all are divisions of quality, education, culture, and spiritual advancement attained by practicing control of the mind and senses. All these divisions are based on the particular nature of each individual person, not on the principle of birth. Birth is not mentioned in this verse because birth is immaterial. Vidura is famous in history as born of a Shudrani mother, yet he is more than a Brahmana by qualification because he is seen here to be the disciple of a great sage, Maitreya Muni. Unless one achieves at least the Brahminical qualifications, one cannot understand the Vedic hymns. Mahabharata is also a division of the Vedas, but it is meant for women, Shudras and Dvijabandhus, the worthless children of the higher section. The less intelligent section of society can avail themselves of the Vedic instructions simply by studying the Mahabharata. So a few different things here. So he's inquiring about Varnashram Vibhagam Shtarupa Shila Svabhavataha, the Varnashrama division, and how does he want that Varnashrama division to be described in terms of Rupa, Shila Swabhavataha, Rupa, personal features, form, Shila Swabhavataha, personal character. That's how Srila Prabhupada translates here. Means the Varnashram divisions, they have, there's different personal features, there's different bodily forms even. We see those who are born although the point here is made by Srila Prabhupada in the purport that birth is not the be-all and end-all of one's varna, or definitely ashrama. Nevertheless, it has a we could say, a bearing on it. In other words, Prabhupada would often make the point, the son of a doctor often, by training throughout his life, Because if his father is a doctor, naturally he often becomes a doctor. So similarly too, the son of a Brahmana often is the case he becomes a Brahmana. Exceptions are there. This is the typical system. Of course, there's no bar to one becoming a Brahmana, even if he be from low birth. And the example was cited here of Vidura, who is more than a Brahmana. Nevertheless, we see that there are characteristics that come, Rupa Shila Swabhavataha, those who the Varnashram system is manifested with different forms, Rupa behaviors as well. We see, for example, the Brahmanas, they behave one way. They're characterized by peacefulness, tolerance, etc., knowledge, principally. Kshatriyas are characterized by heroism in battle, courage, etc., like this. These sort of personal qualities. So, with one's Varna also comes different qualities which accompany it. If those qualities aren't there, it's expected that they'll become manifest or at least cultivated, we can say. Sometimes we see, or actually Prabhupada he himself remarked, there's a purport in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, I think Adi Lila, Srila Prabhupada he remarks, Advaita Acharya was worshipping the Shalagram Shila, and Srila Prabhupada he remarks that we haven't introduced Shalagram Shila worship in ISKCON yet, because we see that many of the Brahmanas or disciples are not actually on the Brahminical platform. So, it may be the case sometimes that one is offered Brahminical initiation. There's also other sorts of initiation which are given, though not here. One may be initiated as a Brahmana, but not necessarily possess the qualities in full of a Brahmana. Those can be cultivated. They should be cultivated. This word initiation is also used in respect to Brahminical initiation. One doesn't necessarily have Brahminical qualities at the beginning. It's expected he's awarded that initiation because that potential is seen in him, and also those qualities can be cultivated. Just as a Shudra just as the example is given in Shastra, just as bell metal can be turned to gold by contact with a touchstone, so even a base man, a lowborn, can become a Brahmana specifically by contact with a pure devotee. So these things are possible. And as well, one other variant reading of this verse is that Vidura is asking, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he gives this explanation, that great sage kindly describe Varnashram divisions in terms of symptoms, behavior, and characteristics of mental equilibrium and sense control in relation to the birth of the great sages. Here we have Srila Prabhupada translating. Please also describe the birth of the great sages and the divisions of the Vedas. One other take on it is please describe Varnashram specifically according to the birth of the sages. So just hearing about the lives of the sages, etc., like this. In one sense, the meaning is very similar, but nevertheless, there's one variant reading. And also the categorical divisions of the Vedas. Again, to my knowledge, Maitreya largely doesn't speak on this. It comes in the Bhagavatam. We hear about the lives of the sages. We also hear about the divisions of the Vedas at the end of the Bhagavatam, the 12th canto. Vedas, how does all this relate directly to the Lord? Varnashrama is enacted by Krishna himself. Chaturvarna mayashishtam guna karma vibhagashaha. Krishna himself created the Varnashram system. The Vedas, what are they? They're the breathing of Lord Vishnu, Krishna as well. He's the author, we can say, of the Vedas. The Vedas emanate from him, rather, is more accurate. And the great sages, Krishna appears amongst the sages. The sages, they're mentioned as vibhutis of the Lord, and Krishna incarnates among the sages in different forms. Veda Vyas, for example, he appears, as well as other different forms. So, and regarding this point on Varnashrama, so one's 4 divisions of social statuses, the respective divisions, personal features, personal character. So, I mentioned before, everybody within the Varnashram system, a human being is expected to receive initiation by a bona fide spiritual master. Otherwise, he's not a human being, he's a subhuman. So, how is it that one is to receive spiritual initiation? Spiritual initiation means a transference of divya jnana, divine knowledge, understanding Atma Tattva, understanding one's position, one's relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, how to act on that relationship, and what is the perfection of that relationship. This knowledge is found in the Vedas. So, how is it that those who are low-born, who are not meant to read the Vedas, how are they supposed to derive this knowledge? One thing is through hearing the spiritual master. Another thing, literature is there for them. We hear here, Shudras, they're barred from studying the Vedas. Nevertheless, the Mahabharata, which is considered as the fifth Veda in some places, is meant for their study. Shudras are also allowed. Women, what is that? Dvijabandhu, Shudras, and women are also, the Mahabharata, Vedvyas, he specifically compiled the Mahabharata for their enlightenment. So, despite them having not being able to access the knowledge of the Vedas, they can read the Vedas. Anybody can read the Vedas. In one sense, you see even Western scholars, they've translated the Vedas, at least parts of them. Indologists, you see, have done translations of the Vedas, Upanishads like this, but that doesn't mean they have access to the mantras. They can externally recite or see with the material eyes the external form of the mantras of the Vedas, but it doesn't actually mean they've entered into the understanding of the Vedas. It's something akin to give a clear example, it's just like Mayavadis, they also study the Vedas. They know Upanishads, they study Upanishads, but they don't have access to the meaning of it. That's why Krishna says within the Gita, by all the Vedas he's to be known. Through the Vedas, study of the Vedas means coming to the conclusion that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Otherwise, when he isn't studying the Vedas. His study of the Vedas, he could be studying the Vedas. There's different divisions of the Vedas, but he's being misled by the Vedas. He's not actually getting the real fruit of the Vedas. He's being diverted by imaginary things like promises of heavenly planets, godly delights, merging into some sort of impersonal void like this. So it's possible, technically, for anybody to read the Vedas, but to properly understand the Vedas, to receive qualification to recite and also understand the mantras, it comes through, we can say, what is that? Being Dvija, being twice born, receiving we say Brahminical initiation, like that. So this qualification is there. Otherwise, there's no access to the mantras. Even if one has received, mantras are received within a sampradaya. We hear this. Srila Prabhupada writes elsewhere in the Bhagavatam. One can receive a mantra, but if it's not received within a sampradaya, the mantra has no particular effect. It's just a hollow shell, more or less. Of course, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, it has effect even before initiation. Nevertheless, it's to be received within the sampradaya. So, I can go on and on reciting more verses, but I'll stop here because the purports get longer and I don't want to steal more substantial purports from other speakers. So I can end here and take any comments, questions anybody has. Yes?
Are you aware of any chart or diagram of a tree of conversations in the Bhagavatam? It would help study. Are you aware of any?
I haven't seen anything particularly. I know, I think his name is Gauranga Darshan Prabhu, who does those study books. He keeps track. I don't know of such a diagram like that. I haven't seen diagrams themselves. It could be there.
It would be helpful to see a diagram. And then
Mahesh
it really helps.
Can compile such a thing. It gets very detailed, yeah.
You said someone's compiled it?
No, he would be good to compile such a thing because it gets very confusing. He's good at those confusing things. But I haven't personally seen any sort of diagrams. I know there was books, they give like references, but as far as an actual diagram or table, I haven't seen such a thing.
Okay. I liked, found your point, you're saying how Krishna enjoys the pastime, even the material world. Personally, I've also sometimes in the past, felt very sad about some things within the Krishna conscious movement or whatever. You go to Vrindavan or something like this, so many things. And then you go on the altar and Krishna's like smiling and happy, and the deities are like, they seem to be enjoying. And at least as a neophyte, I was like, how could you be smiling when so many things like this are going on here, like for instance in the temple or whatever, and things like that. But actually Krishna enjoys everything, the whole material world, whatever mess that any conditioned living entity can make, it's not beyond the purview of the laws of material nature or Maya Devi herself. And ultimately, somehow, Krishna has this amazing way in which he just enjoys everything. Even it's not for our benefit, we can enjoy with him, but if we choose to enjoy separately also, it doesn't affect Krishna's enjoyment. Even if he's creating the material world, it doesn't affect his enjoyment. He finds more pleasure with pure devotees, but ultimately he enjoys. And I think this aspect of the fundamental idea of Krishna being the enjoyer, which is so central to our philosophy, I've never learned it anywhere else. Actually, it's so amazing.
Yeah, there's one thing I read. I quoted it in class. I've quoted it to a few devotees, but I just finished the second canto of the Bhagavatam. And I've read it twice, but this time, I don't know, maybe I paid attention to this time. That you can go to the second canto. It's quick. You could go to last chapter, last verse. I think with Srila Prabhupada, he finished the second canto. He took a break from translating the Bhagavatam. I'm not sure. May have done, I'm not sure, maybe Krishna book or something like that. So anyway, you can go to the end, almost to the end. And so anyway, this is inquiries by Parikshit, and then he gives a purport relevant to the verse, and then he quotes from nowhere, seemingly out of nowhere, to conclude the second canto. He says, Ishwar Paramah Krishna Satchid Ananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. Let us all obey the Supreme Lord, whose hand is in everything without exception. It's not exactly relevant to what the verse is speaking about, or even the purport he has before this. He just says it as a conclusion to the second canto. I thought, wow, that's very nice. It's very simple. It's extremely simple. It was very nice. Everything that's going on, directly, Krishna has his hand in whatever is going on. You see, for example, it is not necessarily that Krishna desires such a situation, even if the situation is sour. We can take, for example, prominent example, the breakup of the Gaudiya Math. So nobody wanted such a thing. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he didn't want such a thing. Krishna didn't want such a thing. The devotees within the Gaudiya Math, presumably they also didn't want such a thing, aside from maybe a few. Srila Prabhupada didn't want such a thing. Nobody wanted it. It was a very unpalatable event. But what came out of that, Krishna had his hand in it. Out of that, Srila Prabhupada came to the West. Otherwise, where was the scope of people coming, anyone coming to the West from India? Had the Gaudiya Math just carried on like that, or not split? So, of course, this is a hypothetical, but it seems quite likely. So many things. Krishna has his hand in everything without exception. And we see so many different things. So many examples, so many things could be cited. Srila Prabhupada, he had facility, we could say, or he had the orders to go to the West, but he went to the West when he did. He went to the West specifically. He could have gone, because Srila Prabhupada, he laments that he didn't go to the West earlier, but the exact moment in time when Srila Prabhupada went to America was the perfect time to come to America. In fact, one scholar puts it at, he estimates that Srila Prabhupada's success, of course, material calculation, but one scholar says that Bhaktivedanta Swami's timing was perfect, and it was only within, in other words, had he come just a few months later or before, he wouldn't have got the results that he did. Because a few months before, the hippie movement wasn't there, practically. And a few months later, the countercultural movement was, we see Srila Prabhupada came 65, 66. He went to San Francisco during the height of the Summer of Love, which is amazing in and of itself. He just so happened, he was there before, actually, and then he was there for the summer. He was there for the whole, it is like astounding, He was there for the height of the hippie movement. He caught them up, so many different things. Even in his coming to America, he was able to come to America. He was one of the, of course, we hear of a couple different bogus Indian gurus coming to America and preaching. They didn't really do anything. But why there was a big influx of Indian gurus, so-called gurus, to America during the 70s is because just a few months before Srila Prabhupada, he got his approval to come to America, India's government, they had, I don't know the details, but there were restrictions on travel to foreign country. And so it was very difficult to leave India and especially come to America like that. But the Indian government had just lifted these restrictions, and because they lifted these restrictions, Srila Prabhupada was able to more easily go. Was that?
P form.
P form, yeah. So yeah, there's so many different things. If you examine the lives of the pure devotees, also, of course, that's the obvious example. You see any life of the pure devotee, we see Krishna's arrangement. Also our life, we can understand how it was that all of us came to Krishna consciousness, are surviving in Krishna consciousness, our present situation in Krishna consciousness, everything. Krishna has his end in everything. He's overseeing our situation personally. Srila Prabhupada writes somewhere in the second canto that we should never be bereaved, I'm paraphrasing, we should never be aggrieved, because of feeling separation from the Lord. Because the Lord is always there. The pure devotee, he doesn't feel Krishna's separation. Srila Prabhupada is always with Krishna. That means Krishna is always there. Krishna is always in our heart as the super soul, is everything. He has a super soul anyway. He guides the material world directly or indirectly. So even within our own personal lives, Krishna has personal guidance, and he's the witness and the sanctioner we have in Gita. So like that, yeah. Yes.
I've seen like stickers, kind of like fridge magnet kind of things, like kind of devotional little messages that I've seen a few of these, and they don't quite resonate with me in my, like the way I guess I understand the philosophy. So like Krishna, he's all renounced, and like Prabhu was saying, Krishna's always enjoying. Even when the living entities are suffering, Krishna's like kind of like, okay, I mean, you could suffer, but or you can enjoy with me, you know. But I've seen these like fridge magnet kind of things, like Krishna misses you, hang in there, pal.
There's a lecture,
Like-
fridge magnet philosophy.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
good
or like,
title.
you know, like Krishna's
Yeah.
crying, like I miss you kind of thing, and it's kind of like just pat the devotee on the back, like Krishna's like patting you on the back, and it just doesn't quite seem philosophically in line, because Krishna's all renounced. I mean, Krishna's compassionate to the fallen souls, but at the same time he's renounced, and Guru's like the one who's like really compassionate. So I don't know, like, what's the proper understanding on this?
Proper understanding. Well, I won't comment on fridge magnet philosophy, but in regards to like, in regards to that specific point, well, Krishna can be both things. That's the amazingness of Krishna. You see, we only have, when we're sad, we can't be happy. Generally, both things don't exist with us. It's not the sake for Krishna. We see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He's feeling a great separation with Krishna, great pain. Nevertheless, he's very ecstatic in that happiness. So both things can exist. Contradictory qualities can exist in Krishna simultaneously. So what is Krishna's perspective? Well, he does want the living entity. Well, he's not suffering. Krishna doesn't suffer like we suffer, at least. But he does, obviously he wants the living entities to come back to him. That's why he's come as Lord Chaitanya. So many things. We have so many instructions on this. He feels anxiety. We have in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Haridas Thakur, that chapter around there. Lord Chaitanya feels anxiety for the fallen conditioned souls. So that's there. But it doesn't mean Lord Chaitanya, his pastimes are just completely interrupted by that, or his ecstasy is interrupted, just like we have the perverted reflection like that. Both things are there. Krishna is all blissful. At the same time, he wants us to return. He's feeling that he wants us to return. So he makes actions to affect that, sending his devotee like that. So,
Yeah, I mean, you're citing the example of Lord Chaitanya specifically, but wouldn't that be Radharani, like having that compassionate nature? To the
yeah,
fallen
that's
souls?
also there. Krishna is also compassionate. Hey, Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina, but Karuna Sindhu. He's an ocean of mercy. So Krishna is also merciful. Sometimes we hear that Krishna is strict and Radharani is very compassionate. That's true. Radharani, her nature is to be very soft and compassionate. Nevertheless, Krishna also is. You see the nectar of devotion. It's a quality of Krishna. So, I mean, Radharani is Shakti of Krishna. So, so that is also there present within Krishna himself. But yeah, both things are there. Krishna is also very compassionate. So, yeah.
I have a few more things, but I'll let everybody else.
Yeah, sure. Anybody have anything for the men? No? Suresh.
I kind of forgot already. So like, yeah, I did talk with a devotee about this, and it was like one of those late night convos, and it kind of went that direction. Like, yeah, like, all like the ups and downs in ISKCON and like everything that's been happening. It's just like Leela, and we're like participating. And then like to me, I was like, okay, like he was presenting some good points, and then like it seemed like, okay, wait, is this kind of like how the Sahajiyas think or something? Like even though they have all these ups and downs in devotional service, it's all Leela, and like then they take it cheaply. I just
Yeah.
kind of, talking.
Yeah, the thing is, we shouldn't confuse Leela with the tendency of the conditioned soul to be bahirmukha, okay, to turn his face away from Krishna, to be averse from Krishna. That is not necessarily Krishna. That's the conditioned soul's own impetus. And what comes from that means bodily consciousness, actions that are based upon aversion to Krishna, aham mimeti, all these things. It's not. We shouldn't take it as Krishna's pastime. Definitely, it's not Krishna's pastimes. It's obviously not the conditioned soul's pastime. Some people think like that. So neither of this is the case. Nevertheless, we shouldn't understand it that Krishna, the soul is never independent from Krishna. Krishna, how is it his? How does the conditioned soul enjoying separately from Krishna? How does that have its place in Krishna's pastimes? Because Krishna ultimately allows it. Krishna ultimately allows it at the end of the day. Now, what the soul wants to do, if he wants to burn himself, that's up to the soul himself. But it doesn't taint. We have this verse in the Gita, I'm just forgetting it, but Krishna is aloof from this world. So Krishna is aloof in one sense. Although he gives, the facilities are there, he creates the material world, he has, the jiva is expanded from him. Obviously that's there, we're expansions of Krishna. The material world is created, he gives all the functions which we're hearing. So he gives all the facility to the jiva. So in that way, this creation is affected by him, and then he hands it over to the jiva to enjoy. And what the jiva does with it, that's his own accord. But simultaneously, it's not that Krishna just leaves the jiva to his own whims. In one sense, he does, but he's also there personally. We have this analogy of the two birds sitting on one tree, one is eating the fruits, another is observing. So Krishna is also always there. For karmis and demons, Krishna doesn't get involved for the most part. He just backs off and sees, like, okay, if you want to do like that, then I'll interact with you. My reciprocation with you is through, highly indirectly, through the means of the demigods, material nature, Maya, etc., like this, in terms of letting you create karma and letting you reap the fruit of your karma. For devotees, it's direct. Krishna removes all of their karma, or minimizes it, sometimes we also hear, and he personally takes charge of their life. So in both situations, whether one be a devotee or whether one be just straight up karmi, either way, Krishna is there. He's making arrangements for different people. Krishna is, say somebody wants to become very famous, one is a karmi with such a desire, Krishna will make an arrangement to do so, directly or indirectly. So it's a little subtle line, but there's the subtle line that is marked by the independence of the soul itself. In other words, is this clear? Is that making sense? Yeah, I could speak more on that, but that's kind of it in like a nutshell. Okay? Anything else? You want to ask one thing and then I can go to the Matajis?
Maybe you can go to them first.
Okay. Matajis, any questions from? Yes, there's one in the back.
So you were speaking like on love and that there's no love in this material world and it's only love for Krishna.
And Krishna's devotees, that's
and
also
Krishna's
there.
devotees.
Yeah.
And also, well, to get a glimpse of that, and then these relationships, like in the material sense, is pretty much like, off of sex pleasure. But then we hear that the closest, I would say, love is between the mother and the child, right? So when it comes to, I would say, family who, do everything they can for us, raised us up, but then you, I would say, try to preach Krishna consciousness to them, and they may be favorable, but they're not going to, completely change their ways. And I'm just trying to understand, like, how should we go about treating others who will go the extra mile to make sure that, we're okay, but then how do we know that that's, real love or not? I mean, it's just like a very
well,
thing.
we have not sometimes. So the philosophical understanding, I'll give you this. So it's that love, that affection is probably better defined. It's affection due to the body. I mean, you've read this in the books. I don't have to so much repeat, but because there's a bodily relationship, there's affection like that. But it's not that, for example, it's unconditional in the sense that affection is there simply because the mother and daughter are related on a bodily basis. Otherwise, there's so many infants in this world, but we don't see a mother caring for children with such intimacy like one does their own child. So that bodily connection is there, therefore it's conditioned. Now, practically, how to handle it in terms of like acting on that relationship, what to do. We're not crass people, it's not that, like, we understand this in terms of satisfaction. We can't, if we're looking for ultimate satisfaction out of such a relationship, we can't find it out of such material relationships. Those relationships can only be had, that satisfaction we're looking for out of such relationships, it can only be found ultimately in relationship with Krishna. Also, Krishna's devotees, principally Krishna, we take it like that. But as to like how to act, what is the status and role of the relationship? Well, it's good. It's not that we neglect it just because it's conditional. There's so many. This world is conditional, so even relationships among devotees at times is marked by conditions. Just like devotees, they also have children. So that also comes with some conditions. Because bodily conditions like this, etc. So in terms of like understanding that relationship, I would say, in general advice is like, well, if you can get them to take up Krishna consciousness, you can try. Generally, specifically with families, getting more practical. Generally, it's difficult to preach to families, especially things like parents or seniors in families, uncles and things like this, because they've known you since before you were born. So generally, they don't accept your advice, even if it's good advice. And also, if they're favorable, if the relationship is favorable, keep it favorable. That's one thing. It can be such that family members don't take up Krishna consciousness, but their interaction through Krishna consciousness is through through their devotee, child or sibling or whatever it may be. So in that way, they're interacting through Krishna consciousness. They may not come up fully. Many people in this world, they don't come up fully. Just like, anyway, we have, like, it's not that everybody who's coming to the temple, they'll come up to the full platform. We can't expect like that. So similarly, too, we can't expect everybody in the world to come to the full platform. But we can give them what we can. We can keep the relationship favorable, etc. like that. There's no need, in other words, to put it bluntly, there's no need to sever like relationships or anything like that just because it's a bodily relationship. That doesn't make sense. We can benefit them and give them Krishna as much as possible, as much as they're able to accept in whatever form they're able to accept, even if that's just limited to giving them prasad, because everybody would accept some prasad. So the details of that depend on the individual relationship, but that's my general understanding and approach that I've understood from different devotees regarding it. Is that okay? Is that like clear in that matter? Yeah? Okay. Okay? Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So I covered, I will say it for the record, I covered way more verses than I was supposed to. So the speaker of the next class begins on Canto 3, Chapter 7, text number 30. Okay? Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.